Nico Rosberg said Lewis Hamilton would win a race for Ferrari in 2026, and the entire paddock dismissed him as a bitter ex-rival who couldn't let go.
Lewis is still just as fast as he has always been in the past years, and he's just still going to be just as difficult to beat as he has always been in the past years,
Nobody is dismissing him now, because not only did Rosberg predict the win, he predicted the exact psychological mechanism behind it, the exact moment it would trigger, the exact effect it would have on Hamilton's teammate, and the exact reason nobody else on the grid could stop it. This is not a Barcelona story. This is the story of a man who spent 4 years living inside Lewis Hamilton's head and drew a detailed map of everything he found there. A map that the rest of the world ignored. And a map that, in the summer of 2026, is playing out lap by lap, corner by corner, exactly as written. So today, we are going to go through that map. Every prediction, every warning, and every single moment where Rosberg has been proven right. And the one enormous prediction that is still hanging in the air, unsettled, waiting to be answered over the next 12 races. Because if Rosberg's second prediction lands the way his first one did, Formula One is about to witness something genuinely historic. The prediction that aged like fine Chianti. Let's start with context, because the story only works when you understand what Rosberg was walking away from. December 2016, Abu Dhabi. Nico Rosberg has just become Formula One world champion for the first and only time in his career. He beat Lewis Hamilton by 5 points across 21 races. He survived crashes, team politics, engine penalties, and arguably the most psychologically exhausting season in modern motorsport. And then, 5 days after lifting that trophy, he quit. Not slowed down, not took a sabbatical. Quit. Permanently. Announced his retirement effective immediately and walked out of the garage that had defined his entire adult life. The media reaction was brutal. He was called a coward. He was called fragile. The narrative was simple. Rosberg knew he could not beat Hamilton a second time, so he ran before the embarrassment arrived. But here is what the media missed entirely. Rosberg was not running from Hamilton. He was telling you something about Hamilton. He was showing you, with the most dramatic possible gesture, the sacrifice of his entire career, exactly how much it cost to beat him once. Think about what he said publicly in the weeks after retiring. He described the 2016 season as requiring him to give up everything else in life. He gave up social activities. He gave up relaxing. He gave up the version of himself that existed outside of racing. He turned himself into a single-function machine pointed at one target. And even then, he only won by 5 points. Rosberg was not bitter when he talked about Hamilton. He was precise. Every time he sat in a pundit chair or gave an interview over the following years, he was not venting. He was filing a report, a detailed psychological assessment of the most complex competitor he had ever faced. And the report has several key findings that matter enormously right now, in 2026. The warning nobody filed away. Finding number 1. Hamilton's positive flywheel. Rosberg identified this pattern years before it became obvious to anyone else. When Hamilton is comfortable, when the car responds to him, when the team structure is clear, when momentum is building race by race, he enters a compounding state of motivation. Each good result makes the next one more likely. Each podium sharpens his qualifying instinct. Each win accelerates his ability to extract performance that the data says should not be there. Rosberg called it a positive flywheel. He said that once it starts spinning in Hamilton's favor, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to interrupt. He also identified the inverse. When Hamilton is uncomfortable, when the car fights him, when team dynamics are unstable, when results are not coming, the flywheel spins down, and Hamilton's performance fluctuates in ways that can look, to an outside observer, like decline. Rosberg watched the inverse happen in real time during Hamilton's first season at Ferrari in 2025. Hamilton arrived at Maranello with enormous fanfare. the most celebrated driver transfer in the sport's history, and what followed was the most painful season of his career. Not a single podium in 24 races, qualifying gaps to Leclerc that the team could not explain publicly, a visible disconnection between Hamilton and the SF25 that no amount of setup work seemed to fix. The media narrative shifted quickly. Some commentators, not Rosberg, began suggesting Hamilton was finished, that 40 years old was simply too old, that the 2025 Ferrari was exposing a driver in irreversible decline. Rosberg never said that. In December 2025, speaking to Sky Sports F1 after the final race of the season, Rosberg described Hamilton's year as painful and incredibly hard. But he immediately pivoted. He said the 2026 regulations reset was Hamilton's huge hope. He said Hamilton needed to feel comfortable in a new car, and he said directly that Hamilton had to continue, had to give himself another shot. That was not sympathy. That was Rosberg reading his own map and telling you what it said. Because here is what nobody is saying. Yet Rosberg was not just predicting a recovery, he was predicting a specific type of recovery, driven by a specific trigger, producing a specific outcome. And that prediction is now confirmed. If you want to know whether Rosberg's second prediction, the one about the championship, comes true before Monza, subscribe right now. Because tomorrow I am breaking down the exact point scenarios that put Hamilton inside striking distance of Kimi Antonelli, and the numbers are genuinely surprising. The dagger he left in every teammate's back. But Rosberg's map had more than one finding, and this is where the 2026 season stops being about Hamilton's comeback and starts being about something far more interesting. Finding number 2, the garage game. Rosberg has spoken about this repeatedly and with increasing specificity as the years have passed. He described Hamilton's ability to operate inside a team as a dagger in the heart strategy. Not aggressive, not obvious, subtle, systematic. Hamilton, according to Rosberg, has an almost supernatural ability to absorb a teammate's data and restructure his own driving style around it. He identifies what his teammate does better than him, then adapts, often within a single race weekend, until that advantage either disappears or reverses. Rosberg had to go to extremes to counter this. He lost leg muscle weight deliberately to gain hundredths of a second in qualifying. He studied Hamilton's data obsessively. He woke up earlier. He ran more simulator hours. He restructured his entire preparation cycle just to stay within striking distance. And his message to every driver who would share a garage with Hamilton after him was clear. If you do not match the work ethic, he will take what you have and use it against you. Not maliciously, not strategically in a chess sense, but because that is simply what Hamilton does when the flywheel is turning. Now, apply that to Charles Leclerc, Hamilton's Ferrari teammate and the man who dominated the Scuderia during Hamilton's difficult 2025 season. Leclerc entered 2026 as the senior Ferrari driver in every practical sense. He had the most data on the SF26 platform. He had a new long-term contract. He was, by every visible measure, the man Ferrari was building around. Hamilton was meant to be the support act, the legend brought in to mentor, to inspire, to add glamour. That framing lasted until approximately lap 47 in China. Because from the moment Hamilton began producing results from the China podium, through Monaco, through Canada, to Barcelona, the garage dynamic shifted. Not dramatically, not with conflict, but measurably. Hamilton's race pace data started overlapping with Leclerc's. Then it started exceeding it on certain compounds, and by the time Barcelona qualifying arrived, Hamilton was on the front row, while Leclerc crashed out of Q3. Rosberg noticed immediately. Speaking on Sky Sports F1 after the race, he pointed directly at Leclerc. He said, "Charles, not too long ago, was the king of Ferrari. New contract, big money. Now he has seen Lewis take the first race win. That is not commentary. That is Rosberg reading from a script he wrote before the season started. The Dagger, as predicted, has landed. Why Barcelona was not the peak. It was the beginning. Now, here is where the story turns completely. Most of the coverage after Barcelona treated Hamilton's victory as a feel-good conclusion. The narrative arc was neat. Veteran driver struggles in year 1, returns in year 2, wins in year 2. Story complete. Rosberg does not see it that way. And based on everything he has mapped about how Hamilton's flywheel works, he is correct not to. Barcelona was not the destination. Barcelona was the ignition point. This is the core of Rosberg's flywheel thesis that the mainstream coverage consistently undersells. Hamilton does not peak at the first win and cruise. The first win removes a psychological ceiling. It confirms that the car is capable, that the team relationship is functional, and that the body and mind are still operating at the required level. And once that confirmation arrives, everything that follows accelerates. We saw this pattern in 2019, when Hamilton responded to early season pressure from Valtteri Bottas, Hamilton's former Mercedes teammate, by reeling off 8 wins in the final 14 races. We saw it in 2020, when a mid-season technical issue at Silverstone could have derailed the title. Instead, it produced a 10-race unbeaten stretch. Now the flywheel is spinning again, and it is spinning at a circuit in the second half of the season where Ferrari's SF26 has historically performed well. There is also a technical dimension here that matters enormously and has received almost no coverage outside specialist outlets. Ferrari is mid-process on an emergency ADUO, Aerodynamic and Drivetrain Unified Overhaul, the FIA's new mid-season development framework introduced under 2026 regulations, allowing 1 structural power unit upgrade per team between rounds 9 and 14. The pressure on that process is immense. If the upgrade lands cleanly, Ferrari's straight-line speed deficit to Mercedes, currently estimated at approximately 12 km per hour on full-power straights, narrows enough to make the SF26 genuinely competitive on the power circuits that dominate the second half of the calendar: Spa, Monza, Baku. If the upgrade fails, or arrives late, or produces instability in the car's balance, Hamilton's championship window closes quickly. This is the variable Rosberg cannot account for, because Rosberg's map is a psychological map. It tracks Hamilton's mind with extraordinary precision, but it cannot control Ferrari's engineering department. And this is exactly why the second half of his prediction remains unsettled. The one prediction that could make Rosberg untouchable. Rosberg's second prediction, the one that has not yet landed, is about the championship. He said 2 weeks before Barcelona, in an interview that was widely clipped across social media, that Hamilton's level was not quite there yet for a title fight, that the SF26 at that point was not good enough to take the Drivers' Championship. After Barcelona, he softened. He said the win would propel Hamilton and change the psychological picture entirely. He said momentum and confidence, his own language recycled back into a live race broadcast. But he has not yet said Hamilton will win the title. And as of this week, Hamilton sits 41 points behind Kimi Antonelli, the 19-year-old Mercedes rookie who has led the championship since round 1 and won 4 of the first 8 races, with 12 rounds remaining. That gap is significant, but it is not insurmountable. Antonelli retired in Barcelona, his second retirement of the season. Mercedes has shown vulnerability on hot weather circuits, and the next 2 venues, the Red Bull Ring and Silverstone, historically favour Ferrari's aerodynamic philosophy over Mercedes' power-first setup. If Hamilton takes back-to-back victories at those 2 circuits, a genuine possibility, not a fantasy, the gap drops to approximately 14 points before the summer break. At that point, Rosberg's second prediction collapses, and the map he drew in 2016, which everyone ignored, becomes one of the most accurate pieces of sports analysis in Formula One history. Nico Rosberg did not retire because he was afraid of Lewis Hamilton. He retired because he understood something about Hamilton that nobody else on the grid had the data to understand. He understood that beating Hamilton was not a racing problem, it was a human problem, and no amount of engineering, strategy, or raw pace could solve it permanently. You could win once if you gave up everything else in your life for a full calendar year, but you could not maintain that. Hamilton was not a competitor, he was a condition. And conditions, unlike competitors, do not have bad days. They do not get tired. They do not make peace with second place. They just keep running. If this changed how you see what is actually happening at Ferrari this season, then you need to be here tomorrow, because I am going round by round through the remaining calendar, and the specific race where the championship lead changes hands, if it changes hands, is not the one anyone is expecting. Subscribe now. That video goes live tomorrow.